The claiming ceremony was supposed to be the greatest night of Nerissa's life. For 3 months, she had been the Alpha King's secret. Stolen kisses in moonlit gardens, whispered promises in shadowed corridors, his hands memorizing the curves of her body, while his voice swore she was the only one. When the ceremony comes, Rydian had told her, I will claim you before the entire kingdom. You will be my queen. She had believed him. So when Nerissa stood among the eligible women of Valdros, her heart was not racing with uncertainty like the others. It was racing with anticipation. She knew his eyes would find hers. She knew his hand would reach for her. She knew the words he would speak. But the Alpha King walked past her without a glance. He stopped in front of her sister Lysara and spoke the words that shattered everything. I claim this woman as my mate. The hall erupted in celebration. Lysara wept with joy. Their father beamed with pride. And Nerissa stood frozen, her hand pressed against her stomach where Rydian's children, twins she had not yet told him about, grew in secret. She did not scream. She did not weep. She simply waited until the festivities consumed everyone's attention, and then she vanished into the night, leaving behind everything she had ever known. 5 years passed. 5 years of hiding, of survival, of raising 2 children who had their father's silver eyes and their mother's stubborn heart. 5 years of believing she would never see Valdros again. But when the Alpha King's soldiers appeared at her door, when Rydian himself stepped out of the shadows and saw the twin boys clutching her skirts, Nerissa realized that some secrets were never meant to stay buried, and some betrayals could never be forgiven. The great hall of Valdros had been transformed into a glittering spectacle of wealth and power. Thousands of candles blazed from iron chandeliers, their light dancing across silk banners bearing the royal crest, a silver wolf beneath a crescent moon. The scent of night-blooming jasmine hung heavy in the air, pumped through hidden vents to mask the nervous sweat of 300 unmated women who stood in careful rows upon the marble floor. The claiming ceremony happened once every decade. It was the night when the Alpha King would select his queen from among the kingdom's most eligible women. Noble daughters, merchant heiresses, even a few commoners who had caught the eye of the selection council. All of them had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. All of them except Nerissa, who already knew she would be chosen. She stood near the back of the gathered women, not because she was humble, but because Rydian had instructed her to. Let them see me pass every other woman to reach you, he had whispered against her throat just 3 nights ago. Let them understand that no matter where you stand, you are the only one I see. The memory made her shiver despite the warmth of the hall. Beside her, Lysara fidgeted with the embroidered edge of her sleeve. Her elder sister by 2 years, Lysara was conventionally beautiful. Golden hair, delicate features, curves that poets wrote verses about. She had always been their father's favorite, the one groomed for advantageous marriage, the one who received the finest tutors and the most expensive gowns. But tonight, Lysara looked terrified. What if he does not choose anyone from our family? Lysara whispered. Father will be furious. He has spent a fortune on our preparations. Nerissa almost laughed, if only her sister knew. The king will choose wisely, she said, keeping her voice neutral. Whoever he selects will have earned it. She had earned it. Night after night in his private chambers, she had earned every whispered promise, every desperate kiss, every time he had lost himself inside her and breathed her name like a prayer. The thought sent heat pooling low in her belly. Soon, everyone would know. Soon she would stand beside him, not as a secret, but as his queen. The trumpets sounded. Every voice in the hall fell silent as the great doors swung open and the Alpha King entered. Rydian of Valdros was not merely handsome, he was devastating. Tall and broad-shouldered, with hair as black as raven feathers and eyes the color of liquid silver. He moved through the parting crowd like a predator through tall grass, every step radiating the kind of power that made lesser wolves bare their throats instinctively. Nerissa felt her wolf stir beneath her skin, yearning toward him. "Mate," it whispered. "Ours." "Soon," she promised silently. The king ascended the dais at the front of the hall, where his advisors waited in formal robes. He did not sit upon the throne. Instead, he stood at its edge, his silver gaze sweeping across the assembled women like a blade across water. When his eyes passed over her section, Nerissa held her breath. He did not pause, did not acknowledge her with even a flicker of recognition. "It is tradition," she reminded herself. He cannot show favoritism before the claiming. He must appear to consider all candidates equally. But her wolf whimpered uneasily. The master of ceremonies stepped forward, his voice amplified by ancient magic. "Citizens of Valdros, honored guests, eligible daughters of the realm, tonight, our beloved Alpha King shall choose his eternal mate. By ancient law, his selection is absolute and irrevocable. Whomever he claims shall become queen, and her bloodline shall rule Valdros for generations to come." Nerissa's hand drifted unconsciously to her stomach. She was not yet showing, but she knew. The palace healer she had secretly visited had confirmed it just yesterday. Twins. She carried the Alpha King's twins. She had planned to tell Rydian after the ceremony, after he claimed her. After she was safely his queen and no one could question the legitimacy of their union. It would be their secret joy, a private celebration amidst the public festivities. Now, watching him stand so cold and distant on that dais, she felt the first flicker of doubt. The king raised his hand and the hall went deathly still. "I have spent many months considering this decision," Rydian announced. His voice was deep, resonant, filling every corner of the vast space. "A queen must be more than beautiful. She must be intelligent, graceful, and politically advantageous. She must strengthen Valdros through alliance and breeding." Politically advantageous. The word struck Nerissa like a slap. He had never spoken of politics when they were alone. He had spoken of destiny, of fate, of how her scent drove him to madness and her touch set his blood on fire. Rydian descended from the dais and began to walk among the candidates. He passed the first row without stopping, the second row, the third. Nerissa's heart began to pound. He was coming toward her. Just as he had promised, he was passing every other woman to reach her. But then he stopped. 3 women ahead of her, right in front of Lysara. The world tilted. Nerissa watched, unable to breathe, as Rydian reached out and lifted her sister's trembling chin with one finger. "This one," he said. Lysara's eyes went wide with shock. "Your Majesty, I am not—" "You are Lord Morkant's eldest daughter, are you not?" Rydian asked, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "Your family's territories border the eastern mountains. An alliance through marriage would secure our most vulnerable border." Yes, Your Majesty." Rydian released her chin and turned to address the crowd. "I claim Lysara of House Vantris as my mate, my queen, and the mother of my heirs." The hall erupted, cheering, applause, the stamping of feet against marble. Lord Morkant rushed forward to embrace his chosen daughter, tears of joy streaming down his weathered face. Lysara herself looked dazed, overwhelmed, her eyes darting frantically through the crowd as if seeking someone to explain what had just happened. Her gaze found Nerissa's, and in her sister's eyes, Nerissa saw something that made her blood run cold. Not surprise, not confusion, triumph. She knew. The realization crashed over Nerissa like ice water. She knew about us, and she made sure he would choose her instead. But how? How could Lysara have manipulated the Alpha King himself? The questions dissolved into meaningless noise as Rydian took Lysara's hand and led her toward the dais. He did not look back, did not search the crowd for the woman he had held just nights ago, did not seem to remember that she existed at all. Nerissa stood motionless while celebration swirled around her. Her wolf was howling inside her chest, clawing at her ribs, screaming in a pain that had no voice. She pressed her hand harder against her stomach, feeling the impossible truth burning beneath her palm. She was carrying his children, and he had just claimed another woman as his queen. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Vows were exchanged. A crown was placed upon Lysara's golden head. Wine flowed and music played and everyone danced, while Nerissa remained rooted to her spot, invisible and forgotten. When midnight struck, she finally moved. Not toward the festivities, not toward the refreshment tables or the dancing or the clusters of gossiping nobles. Toward the door. She slipped out into the corridor, then through a servant's passage she had memorized during her many secret visits to the palace. Down a staircase, through a storage room, out a delivery entrance that emptied into the moonlit courtyard. The stables were quiet. Most of the grooms were inside celebrating with the rest of the staff. Nerissa found her horse, a dappled mare named Whisper, and saddled her with trembling hands. She had no plan, no money, no provisions beyond the jeweled hairpin she could sell and the cloak on her shoulders. But she had 2 lives growing inside her. 2 innocent souls who deserved better than to be born as bastards, as political inconveniences, as living proof of their father's betrayal. "I will protect you," she whispered to them as she mounted the mare. "No matter what it costs, no matter how far I have to run." She kicked Whisper into a gallop and rode into the darkness, leaving behind everything she had ever known. Behind her, the palace blazed with light and celebration. No one noticed she was gone. 5 years later, the village of Thornwick sat nestled in a valley so remote that most maps forgot to include it. Surrounded by ancient forests and accessible only by a single winding road that washed out completely during the rainy season, it was the kind of place where people came to disappear. Which was precisely why Nerissa had chosen it. She went by Marin now. A simple name for a simple life. Or at least, as simple as life could be, while raising twin boys who had inherited far too much of their father's power. "Mama, watch this." Nerissa looked up from the herbs she was bundling to see her son Calum standing in the center of the cottage's small garden. His silver eyes, Rydian's eyes, sparkled with mischief as he raised his small hands. "Calum, do not—" Too late. A burst of wind erupted from the boy's palms, sending a shower of autumn leaves spiraling into the air. They twisted into a miniature cyclone that danced across the garden before exploding outward, pelting his twin brother Bastian with debris. "Mama!" Bastian shrieked, more outraged than hurt. "He did it again!" Nerissa set down her herbs and strode toward her sons. At 5 years old, they were already showing signs of tremendous power, power that should not have manifested for another decade, power that marked them unmistakably as royal blood. "Calum." She kept her voice firm but gentle. "What have I told you about using your gifts?" The boy's silver eyes dropped to the ground. "Never where others might see." "And why is that?" "Because it could bring bad people who want to hurt us." "That is right." Nerissa knelt before him, brushing leaves from his dark hair. "Your abilities are special, my love. But special things must be protected until you are old enough to protect them yourself." Calum nodded solemnly. He was the bolder of the twins, always pushing boundaries, always testing limits. Bastian was quieter, more watchful, with a sensitivity that sometimes made Nerissa's heart ache. "I am sorry, Mama," Calum mumbled. "I know you are." She pulled him into a hug, then opened her other arm for Bastian, who immediately burrowed against her side. "Now, both of you go wash up. Dinner will be ready soon." The boys scampered inside, their argument already forgotten in the way only children could manage. Nerissa remained kneeling in the garden, her chest tight. Every day they looked more like him. The sharp angle of their jaws, the set of their shoulders, those devastating silver eyes that saw too much and revealed too little. She had hoped distance would dull the resemblance, but if anything, time had sharpened it. If Rydian ever saw them, he would know instantly. "Stop." She forced the thought away. He will never see them. He does not even know they exist. She had been careful. So careful. She had traveled for weeks before settling in Thornwick, crossing through 3 territories and using false names at every stop. She had invented a story about a dead husband, a merchant named Aldrich, who had perished in an accident before they reached their new home. The villagers had accepted her tale without question, but every time she spoke her fictional husband's name, she thought of another man. Another death. Eric of Thornvale. Nerissa closed her eyes, memories she had tried to bury surging unbidden to the surface. She had been 17 when her father arranged the match. Eric was handsome, kind, from a respectable merchant family, not noble, but wealthy enough to satisfy Lord Morcant's debts. Nerissa had not loved him, but she had liked him. She had believed they could build a good life together. Then Lysara had set her sights on him. Her sister had always wanted what Nerissa had. Toys, attention, praise, and eventually, suitors. Lysara had flirted with Eric relentlessly, despite knowing he was promised to her younger sister. And Eric, weak-willed fool that he was, had succumbed. The night before their planned elopement, Eric's chambers had caught fire. The blaze had been impossibly contained, burning only his room while leaving the rest of the inn untouched. He had died screaming. The authorities had called it an accident. Lord Morcant had called it murder. "You were jealous," he had accused Nerissa, his eyes cold with disgust. "You could not bear to lose him to your sister, so you killed him. I do not know how you did it, but I know it was you." Nerissa had denied it desperately. She had been home that night, asleep in her bed, nowhere near the inn where Eric had stayed. But her father had refused to believe her. He had used the accusation to isolate her, to destroy her reputation, to ensure no other family would consider her for marriage. Only Rydian's attention had saved her from complete ruin. The Alpha King had seen something in her that others missed, had pursued her despite the whispers that followed her everywhere. And then he had abandoned her too. "Mama?" Nerissa opened her eyes to find Bastian watching her from the cottage doorway. "I washed my hands," he reported. "Calum did not use soap, but I did." Despite everything, she smiled. "Thank you for telling me. I will make sure he washes properly." The evening passed in comfortable routine. Dinner, stories, the eternal negotiation of bedtime. The twins finally fell asleep after 3 lullabies and 2 glasses of water, leaving Nerissa alone with her thoughts and the crackling fire. She had just settled into her chair with a cup of tea when Bastian's voice drifted down from the loft. "Mama, there is a bird outside my window." "Birds roost at night, darling. It is nothing to worry about. But this one has red eyes. Red like blood." Nerissa's blood turned to ice. She crossed to the window in 3 quick strides and peered out into the darkness. There, perched on the old oak branch that stretched toward the loft window, sat a raven. Its feathers were black as midnight. Its eyes glowed crimson in the moonlight. Goddess protect us. Ravens with red eyes were not natural creatures. They were familiars, extensions of powerful wolves who could see through their eyes and hear through their ears. Someone was watching them. Someone had found them. "Bastian," she called, keeping her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "Come away from the window. Both of you, come downstairs." "But Mama?" "Now." The boys scrambled down the ladder, sensing her fear even if they did not understand its source. She gathered them close, her mind racing through possibilities. Who had sent the familiar? How much had they seen? Had they witnessed Calum's display of power in the garden? "If you see that bird again," she told the twins, her voice low and serious, "do not look at it. Do not speak near it. Come tell me immediately. Do you understand?" Both boys nodded wide-eyed. "Good." She forced a smile. "Now, who wants to sleep in Mama's bed tonight?" The offer, usually reserved for thunderstorms and nightmares, distracted them from their fear. They raced to claim their spots, arguing over who got the side nearest the fire. Nerissa followed more slowly, pausing to check every window, every door, every shadow that might conceal a threat. The raven was gone when she looked again. But she knew with terrible certainty that it would be back. Their time in Thornwick was running out. The knock came 3 days later. Nerissa had barely slept since spotting the raven. She had packed emergency bags for herself and the twins, hidden them beneath loose floorboards. She had mapped escape routes through the forest. She had prepared. But nothing could have prepared her for who stood on her doorstep. Lysara, her sister, the Queen of Valdros, looked nothing like the triumphant bride who had stolen Nerissa's future 5 years ago. Lysara's golden hair was matted and dull, her fine features gaunt with hunger, her eyes hollow with something that looked terrifyingly like despair. "Nerissa," Lysara's voice cracked. "Please, you have to help me. He is going to kill me." For a long moment, Nerissa could only stare. The last time she had seen Lysara, her sister had been draped in silk and diamonds, accepting a crown that should have been Nerissa's. Now she looked like a beggar, thin and desperate and trembling on the threshold. "How did you find me?" "Father's spies." Lysara swayed on her feet. "They have been tracking rumors for months. A woman matching your description, living alone in a remote village, with twin sons who have silver eyes. I came to warn you. To..." Her eyes rolled back in her head, and she collapsed. Nerissa caught her instinctively, staggering under her sister's weight. Lysara was lighter than she should have been, all bones and desperation beneath her travel-worn cloak. "Mama? Who is that lady?" Calem's voice made her heart stop. Both twins stood at the base of the loft ladder, staring at the stranger in their mother's arms. "She is an old friend who has traveled very far," Nerissa managed. "She needs rest. We will talk more in the morning." She carried Lysara to the cot by the fire, stripped off her muddy cloak, and tried to assess her condition. No visible wounds, but her skin was clammy, her pulse weak. Something was very wrong. "The boys," Lysara mumbled, her eyes fluttering. "They look just like him. Just like Rydian." "Sleep," Nerissa commanded. "We will talk when you are stronger." Lysara's eyes closed, and her breathing evened into unconsciousness. The twins peppered her with questions, but Nerissa deflected them with promises of explanations tomorrow. Eventually, she coaxed them back to bed, though neither slept easily. She kept vigil through the long night, watching her sister's pale face in the firelight, and wondering what fresh disaster had followed her to this peaceful valley. Morning brought answers she did not want. Lysara woke slowly, disoriented and weak. Nerissa fed her broth and bread, waiting until color returned to her cheeks before demanding explanations. "You said Rydian is trying to kill you," Nerissa said flatly. "Explain." "The poison." Lysara's hands trembled around her cup. "It has been in my system since our wedding night. The healers call it a wasting illness, but I found the vials hidden in his private chambers. Arsenic, administered in tiny doses over years." "Why would he poison you?" "Because I have not given him an heir." Tears spilled down Lysara's hollow cheeks. 5 years of marriage and my womb remains empty. He blames me, but how can I conceive when he has been slowly destroying my body from the inside? Nerissa's mind reeled. The calculating cruelty of it staggered her. If he wanted to be rid of you, why not simply annul the marriage? Politics. Lysara spat the word. Father's alliances still hold. If Rydian sets me aside without cause, House Vantris and our allies would rebel. But if I die of illness, tragic, blameless illness, he can marry again within the year. And father knows about this? Father knows everything. Lysara's expression twisted with bitterness. He does not care. As long as his political position remains secure, he would watch me die with a smile on his face. Nerissa thought of the red-eyed raven. Her father's spies, Lysara had said. "The familiar," she said slowly. "The raven with crimson eyes. That was father's creature? Lysara nodded. His spy master uses them. Father has been searching for you since you disappeared. He feared what you might reveal about our family's secrets. What secrets? I know nothing that could threaten him. You know about Eric. The name hit Nerissa like a physical blow. Eric died in an accident. Eric died because father killed him. Lysara met her sister's eyes steadily. I did not know for certain until a year ago, when I found correspondence in father's study. He arranged the fire. He murdered Eric and let everyone believe you were responsible. The world tilted beneath Nerissa's feet. No? She shook her head. Why would he? Because Eric was going to expose him. Father had been using Eric's merchant connections to smuggle information to foreign kingdoms. When Eric discovered the truth, when he threatened to go to the authorities, Father silenced him permanently. Lysara's voice was bitter. And he framed you because you were convenient. The jealous sister, heartbroken over her stolen fiancé. Everyone believed it. 5 years. 5 years of carrying the weight of a murder she did not commit. 5 years of shame and isolation and running. All because of her father's treachery. Why are you telling me this now? Nerissa demanded. After all this time? After everything you did? Because I am dying, and I have nothing left to lose. Lysara's gaunt face was eerily calm. And because those boys of yours, Rydian's sons, they could change everything. If the king learns he has legitimate heirs born before his marriage to me, the succession crisis he has manufactured disappears. He would have no reason to kill me. Or he would have every reason to kill all of us. Nerissa's voice hardened. You want to use my children to save yourself. I want to survive. Lysara grabbed her hands desperately. And I want to make amends for what I helped father do to you. Please, Nerissa. I know I do not deserve your help. But I am begging you. Before Nerissa could respond, a sound from outside made both women freeze. Hoofbeats. Many of them. Coming fast along the road to Thornwick. Lysara's face went white. They found me. Goddess help us. They found me. Nerissa ran to the window. At least 20 riders approached the village, their cloaks bearing a crest she recognized all too well. Not her father's men, the royal guard of Valdros. And at their head, mounted on a midnight black stallion, his silver eyes scanning the cluster of cottages with predatory focus, rode the Alpha King himself. Rydian had come. Nerissa's mind raced through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. The back door. Through the forest. She knew paths the king's men would never find. If she grabbed the boys now, if she ran. He will catch you. Lysara's voice was hollow. His trackers are the finest in the realm. The moment you run, he will know, and the hunt will begin. Then what do you suggest? That I open the door and welcome him inside? Let him see the children he abandoned? He did not abandon them. He never knew they existed. The hoofbeats stopped. Voices called out in the village square, commanding and imperious. Nerissa heard doors opening, heard the confused murmurs of her neighbors being roused from their morning routines. They were searching the cottages, one by one. Mama? Calem's voice drifted down from the loft, small and frightened. Nerissa made her decision. Stay with the boys, she told Lysara. Keep them quiet, keep them hidden. If anyone asks, you are my cousin visiting from the eastern provinces, and those children are yours. Nerissa. Swear it. Lysara hesitated, then nodded. I swear. Nerissa grabbed her herb basket and headed for the door. If she met them outside, away from the cottage, she might be able to deflect their attention. A simple herbalist, concerned about the commotion, asking if anyone needed healing. She stepped into the morning light just as the first soldiers reached her gate. Ho, halt! The lead guard held up a gloved hand. State your name and business. I am Marin, the village herbalist. Nerissa kept her voice steady despite her thundering heart. Is there trouble? Has someone been injured? The guard studied her with suspicious eyes. "We seek a woman. Tall, golden-haired, traveling alone. She may be wounded or ill. Have you seen anyone matching that description?" "Many travelers pass through Thornwick." Nerissa shrugged with practiced casualness. "We are on the trade route to the northern provinces. I could not possibly remember them all." "This woman would have arrived recently, within the past day." "Then I have not seen her. I was gathering herbs in the forest yesterday and only returned at nightfall." The guard seemed unconvinced. He opened his mouth to press further, but a voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "Stand down, Commander. I will handle this myself." Every nerve in Nerissa's body ignited. She would know that voice anywhere. It had haunted her dreams for 5 years, sometimes tender, sometimes cruel, and always impossible to forget. The soldiers parted, and the Alpha King strode through their ranks. He was older now. The boyish softness she remembered had hardened into something fiercer, more dangerous. Lines of strain marked the corners of his silver eyes, and his jaw was shadowed with stubble that suggested sleepless nights. But he was still devastatingly beautiful, still radiated that overwhelming power that made her wolf want to simultaneously flee and submit. Rydian stopped 3 paces from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Nerissa watched emotions flicker across his face. Confusion, recognition, disbelief. His nostrils flared slightly, testing her scent, and she saw the exact instant when certainty struck him. Nerissa. Her name left his lips like a prayer, like a curse, like a wound that had never healed. "You must be mistaken, Your Majesty." She forced her voice to remain calm. "My name is Marin. I am merely a humble herbalist." "Do not." His voice dropped to a growl. "Do not stand there and lie to my face. I have spent 5 years searching for you. 5 years believing you were dead. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" Rage flared hot in her chest. "What it did to you? You chose my sister at our claiming ceremony. You looked right through me and chose her. What exactly was I supposed to do? Stay and watch you build a life with her?" "I had no choice." "There is always a choice." The soldiers shifted uncomfortably, uncertain where to look. Their king was shouting at a village herbalist, and nothing in their training had prepared them for this. Rydian seemed to remember himself. He took a breath, visibly wrestling his composure back into place. "We need to speak privately," he said, his voice forcibly controlled. "There are things you do not understand." "I understand perfectly. You chose political advantage over—" She stopped herself before she could say, "Over me, over us, over the children you never knew about." "Over what?" Rydian stepped closer, his silver eyes searching her face. "Finish that sentence." "It does not matter. That was 5 years ago. I have built a new life here. Whatever you came looking for, you will not find it." "I came looking for my wife." The word was bitter on his tongue. "Lysara fled the palace 3 days ago. Our trackers followed her trail to this village." So he did not know, did not suspect that his dying queen lay hidden in the cottage behind her, or that 2 silver-eyed boys were watching from the loft window. "I told your guard. I have not seen any golden-haired woman." Rydian studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, he looked past her toward the cottage. "You live alone?" "Yes." "No husband? No family?" "I am a widow." The lie came easily after years of practice. "My husband died before we reached Thornwick. I have been alone ever since." Something flickered in Rydian's expression. Relief? Hope? It vanished before she could identify it. "I do not believe you," he said quietly. "And I will find out what you are hiding." He raised his hand, and the guards moved toward her cottage. Nerissa's control shattered. "No!" She lunged forward, putting herself between the soldiers and her door. "You have no right. This is my home. You cannot." "I am the Alpha King." Rydian's voice was cold now, all traces of their former intimacy buried beneath royal authority. I can do whatever I deem necessary to protect my kingdom, including searching the homes of women who lie to my face. Rydian, please. The name slipped out before she could stop it. Intimate, familiar. The name she had gasped in darkness while his body moved against hers. He went utterly still. Please, Nerissa repeated, softer now. Whatever you think is in there, you are wrong. Let me prove it to you. Just not like this. Not with soldiers and force. Give me a chance to explain. For an endless moment, he simply looked at her. Then he raised his hand again. The guard stopped. Everyone out, Rydian commanded. Establish a perimeter around the village. No one enters or leaves without my permission. The soldiers obeyed instantly, withdrawing to follow their orders. Within moments, Nerissa and Rydian stood alone in her small garden. Talk, he said. You have 5 minutes. Nerissa's mind scrambled for a story, any story that might satisfy him without revealing the truth. But before she could speak, a sound from inside the cottage made her blood freeze, a child's laugh, high and bright and unmistakable. Rydian's silver eyes snapped to the door. Widow who lives alone, he repeated softly, danger threading through every syllable. No family, you said. Nerissa could not breathe. The cottage door swung open and Calum tumbled out, chasing after a butterfly that had escaped through the crack. Mama, look! It is the blue kind that only comes in autumn. He skidded to a halt when he saw the stranger standing beside his mother. His silver eyes, identical to the ones now staring at him in stunned disbelief, went wide with uncertainty. Mama, Calum whispered, who is that man? Rydian looked at the boy, then at Nerissa, then back at the boy. His face drained of all color. 5 years old, he said hoarsely, silver eyes, dark hair. His gaze dropped to Calum's features, tracing the familiar lines of jaw and cheekbone. He looks exactly like... Calum, go inside. Nerissa's voice was barely a whisper. Now. But the boy did not move. He was staring up at Rydian with the fearless curiosity of childhood, completely unaware that his entire world was about to shatter. You smell like me, Calum said, tilting his head. Why do you smell like me? Rydian dropped to one knee, bringing himself to the child's eye level. What is your name? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Calum. What is yours? Rydian. The boy considered this. That is a funny name. Are you a king? You look like the kings in Mama's storybooks. Calum. Nerissa moved forward, desperate to end this. Inside. Right now. Yes, I am a king. Rydian did not look away from the child's face. And I think I might be your father. The words hung in the morning air like a blade waiting to fall. Calum's brow furrowed. But I do not have a father. Mama said he went away before I was born. I did go away. Rydian's voice cracked. But not because I wanted to. I went away because I did not know. I did not know you existed. Enough. Nerissa grabbed Calum's hand and pulled him behind her. You have no right to fill his head with... No right. Rydian surged to his feet, his control finally snapping. He is my son. Look at him. He is unmistakably my son. You kept him from me for 5 years, and you dare speak to me of rights? You abandoned us. I never knew. Because you chose her. They stood there, breathing hard, 5 years of pain and betrayal erupting between them like wildfire. And from the cottage doorway, a small voice called out, Mama, why is there another boy who looks exactly like me? Bastian had appeared beside his brother, his silver eyes round with confusion. Rydian looked at the second boy, the identical features, the matching silver gaze. Twins. He had twin sons he had never known existed. His legs seemed to give out. The Alpha King of Valdros, the most powerful man in the realm, sank to his knees in the dirt of a village garden, staring at the children who should have been his heirs. "What have you done?" he whispered, looking up at Nerissa with devastated eyes. "What have we done?" The cottage felt impossibly small with Rydian inside it. He sat at her worn wooden table, filling the space with his presence, while the twins watched him from the safety of their mother's arms. Lysura had retreated to the loft at Nerissa's urgent command, hidden beneath blankets, her labored breathing the only evidence of her existence. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Rydian broke the silence. "Their names. Tell me their names." "Calum and Bastian." Nerissa kept her voice flat, refusing to give him the satisfaction of her emotion. "Calum is older by 4 minutes. Bastian is the quieter one." Rydian's gaze moved between the boys, drinking in every detail. "Do they know? About what they are? About their heritage?" "They know nothing. To them, their father was a traveler who died before they were born, a convenient fiction that kept them safe." "Safe from what?" "From you." The word came out sharper than she intended. "From your court? Your politics? Your poisonous family alliances? I saw what that world did to me. I was not about to let it destroy them." Rydian flinched as if she had struck him. "You truly believe I would have harmed my own children?" "I believed you loved me." Nerissa met his eyes steadily. "And then you chose my sister in front of the entire kingdom. So forgive me if my faith in your intentions is somewhat diminished." The boys squirmed in her lap, uncomfortable with the tension thick in the air. "Mama," Bastian whispered, "can we go play outside?" Nerissa hesitated. Every instinct screamed to keep them close, to never let them out of her sight while Rydian was near. But they did not deserve to be trapped in the middle of this confrontation. "Stay in the garden," she said finally. "Do not go beyond the gate." The twins scrambled down and fled through the door, clearly relieved to escape the suffocating atmosphere. The moment they were gone, Rydian leaned forward. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning. I need to understand." "What is there to understand? You chose Lysara. I discovered I was pregnant. I ran." "You were pregnant at the ceremony?" "I had just found out. The day before." Nerissa laughed bitterly. "I was planning to tell you afterward, after you claimed me. After we were safely bound together and no one could question the children's legitimacy." Rydian closed his eyes, pain etching deep lines into his face. "If I had known—" "What? You would have chosen differently? Do not insult me with pretty lies." "It is not a lie." His eyes opened, blazing with intensity. "Your father came to me the night before the ceremony. He had information, damaging information about my family, about crimes my own father committed before his death. He threatened to expose everything unless I claimed Lysara instead of you." Nerissa's breath caught. "My father blackmailed you?" "He gave me an impossible choice, my family's honor and my throne, or the woman I loved." Rydian's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I chose wrong. I have known it every day since. But I thought if I married Lysara, if I did what he demanded, at least you would be safe. At least you would be free to find happiness elsewhere." "Happiness?" The word tasted like ash. "I spent 5 years hiding in a forgotten village, raising 2 children alone, terrified every single day that someone would discover them. That is not happiness, Rydian. That is survival." "I know." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. "And I will spend the rest of my life atoning for it. But you have to understand, I never stopped looking for you. The moment you disappeared, I sent trackers to every corner of the realm. I searched for years. Everyone told me you were dead, that I should accept it, but I could not. Something in my soul refused to let you go." Nerissa stared at his outstretched hand. Part of her wanted to take it, to fall into his arms and pretend the last 5 years had never happened, but the wounds ran too deep. "Lysara told me something," she said carefully. "About your marriage. About the reasons she fled." Rydian's expression shuddered. "What did she tell you?" "That you have been poisoning her. slowly, for years, to manufacture an excuse to set her aside. Silence stretched between them. Then, to her shock, Rydian laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. Is that what she believes? He shook his head. Your sister has always been skilled at spinning narratives that paint her as the victim. She showed me the evidence, vials in your chambers, arsenic. Vials that she planted there herself. Rydian's silver eyes hardened. The poison is real, Nerissa. She truly has been slowly sickening over the past year. But she has been administering it to herself, building a case to accuse me of attempted murder. She intended to flee to a foreign kingdom, present her evidence, and have them declare war on Valdros to avenge her tragic death. Nerissa's mind reeled. Why would she do that? Because she discovered something she should not have. Something about your father's dealings and the true source of his power. Rydian leaned closer, his voice dropping. Your father has been selling information to Valdros's enemies for years. Military positions, trade routes, royal secrets. Lysara found proof, and instead of bringing it to me, she decided to use it as leverage. Leverage for what? For control. For the throne itself? Eventually? Rydian's jaw tightened. Your sister is not the helpless victim she has presented herself to be. She is a player in a game far more dangerous than you know, and now she is here, in this cottage, filling your head with lies designed to turn you against me. Nerissa's head spun. Two completely different stories. Two people she had once trusted, each painting the other as a monster. How am I supposed to know who is telling the truth? Rydian stood and moved around the table. He knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. His skin was warm. She had forgotten how warm he always felt, like carrying a piece of summer wherever he went. I am not asking you to trust me, he said quietly. I have not earned that. But I am asking you to give me a chance to prove myself. Let me know my sons. Let me protect all three of you. Whatever your father and sister have planned, I will keep you safe from it. And if Lysara is telling the truth, if you are the monster, Rydian held her gaze without flinching, then you will have every opportunity to discover it. I will hide nothing from you. Every document, every secret, every decision I have made in the past 5 years, it is all yours to examine. Judge me by my actions, not by the accusations of people who have already betrayed you once. Nerissa looked down at their joined hands. His thumbs were tracing small circles against her palms, a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. The boys, she said finally, they are not pawns in whatever game you are playing. They are my sons. Rydian's voice roughened with emotion. They are the heirs I thought I would never have. I would sooner cut off my own arm than use them as pawns. Pretty words. Then let me prove them true. He lifted one hand to her face, his fingers brushing her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. Give me 1 month. Stay in the palace. Let me court you properly this time. Let our sons know their father. If at the end of that month you still want to leave, I will provide you with a home anywhere in the realm and enough wealth to live comfortably for the rest of your lives. And if I decide to stay? Something flickered in his silver eyes, hope, desperate and barely contained. Then I will spend every remaining day of my existence making up for the years I stole from us. Nerissa should refuse. Every rational thought in her mind screamed to grab her children and run as far and as fast as possible. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. 1 month, but I am not staying in the palace. Rydian's brow furrowed. Where then? The old hunting lodge, the one in the Thornwood Forest where we used to... She stopped, heat rising to her cheeks. Understanding dawned in his eyes. The hunting lodge where they had first made love, where he had worshipped her body for hours and whispered promises he had been unable to keep. The lodge, he repeated softly. Yes, that is fitting. They stayed like that for a long moment, hands intertwined, faces close enough that she could feel his breath against her lips. Then a child's scream shattered the silence. Nerissa was on her feet in an instant, racing for the door. In the garden, Bastian stood frozen with terror while Calum faced down 3 armed men who had climbed over the back fence. Not royal guards. These men wore no crest, no uniform. Just dark leather and cruel smiles. Well, well, the leader drawled, his eyes fixed on the silver-eyed children before him. Lord Morcant was right. The bastards do exist. Nerissa's blood turned to ice. Her father had found them. Rydian moved faster than Nerissa had ever seen anyone move. One moment he was beside her in the doorway. The next he was across the garden, placing himself between the intruders and the children. "Touch them," he growled, his voice barely human, "and I will tear out your spines while you watch." The lead mercenary hesitated. He had expected a frightened woman and 2 small children, not the Alpha King in full protective fury. His companions shifted uneasily, hands moving toward their weapons. "We have no quarrel with you, Your Majesty." The man's voice had lost its confident drawl. "We were hired to retrieve the children. Nothing more." "By whom?" "Lord Morcant. He claims they are his grandchildren and wishes them returned to his care." "His care?" Nerissa stepped forward, her own wolf rising dangerously close to the surface. "He wants them silenced, eliminated. They are proof of his treachery, and he cannot allow them to exist." The mercenary shrugged. "What he does with them after delivery is not our concern. We were paid to collect them. That is all." Rydian's laugh was low and terrifying. "You were paid to die then, because I will not allow you to leave this garden alive. There are only 2 of you and 3 of us, plus another dozen waiting in the forest. Then summon them." Rydian's eyes began to glow with the silver light of an alpha on the edge of transformation. "Summon 100. It will make no difference." The mercenary opened his mouth to respond, but he never got the chance. Rydian moved. What followed was not a fight. It was a massacre. Nerissa had never seen the Alpha King in true combat. Their courtship had been all moonlight and tenderness, stolen moments of passion, not violence. But now she understood why kingdoms trembled at his name. He did not fully shift. There was no need. He simply became something more than human, faster than the eye could follow, stronger than any mortal should be. The first mercenary was dead before he could draw his sword. The second managed to raise his weapon, but Rydian's claws tore through his throat mid-swing. The leader tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Rydian caught him, slamming him against the garden fence with enough force to splinter the wood. "The children," Rydian said, his voice eerily calm despite the blood dripping from his hands. "Were you truly planning to harm the children?" "Just following orders," the man gasped. "Please, I have a family of my own." "Then you should have thought of them before accepting a contract to hurt mine." A single motion, a wet crack. The mercenary slumped to the ground. Silence fell over the garden. The twins stood frozen, Bastian's arms wrapped around Calum, both boys staring at the carnage with wide, terrified eyes. Nerissa moved toward them, but Rydian got there first. He knelt in the blood-soaked grass, ignoring the gore that stained his clothing, and opened his arms. "It is over," he said gently. "They cannot hurt you. No one will ever hurt you. I swear it on my life." Calum was the first to move. He released his brother and stepped forward, his small hand reaching out to touch Rydian's face. "You protected us," the boy whispered. "You killed them to protect us." "I would kill 1,000 more." Rydian's voice broke slightly. "I would burn down the entire world if it meant keeping you safe." Bastian crept forward, still trembling. Are you really our father? Truly?" Rydian looked at the quieter twin with such profound tenderness that Nerissa felt tears prick her eyes. "I am," he said, "and I am so sorry it took me this long to find you." Both boys launched themselves into his arms. Rydian held them like a drowning man clutching driftwood. His eyes squeezed shut, his jaw clenched against obvious emotion, his blood-stained hands impossibly gentle as they cradled his sons. Nerissa watched from a distance, her heart cracking open. This was what she had denied them. 5 years of moments like this. Father and sons, protection and love, the fundamental bond she had convinced herself they did not need. She had been so focused on her own pain, her own fear, that she had never considered what her children were missing. "Mama?" Calem's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Come here." She approached slowly, still uncertain of her place in this new reality. But when she reached them, Rydian's arm snaked out and pulled her into the embrace as well. Suddenly she was surrounded by them, the warm bulk of Rydian's body, the small wriggling forms of her sons, the scent of family and belonging she had not realized she craved until this moment. "I have you," Rydian murmured against her hair. "All 3 of you. I finally have you." They stayed like that until the sound of approaching horses shattered the moment. Rydian's guards, summoned by the noise of the fight, came thundering into the garden with weapons drawn. They took in the scene: 3 dead mercenaries, their king covered in blood, 2 children and a woman wrapped in his arms, and immediately began securing the perimeter. "Your Majesty?" The commander dropped to one knee. "Are you injured?" "I am fine, but there are more enemies in the forest." "Find them. Bring me their leader alive." "At once, Your Majesty." The guards dispersed, and Rydian finally released his hold on his family. He stood, lifting both boys as if they weighed nothing, one in each arm. "We leave for the palace immediately," he said. "It is not safe here anymore." Nerissa hesitated. "Lysara." Rydian's expression hardened. "What about her?" "She is inside. Hiding." Nerissa swallowed. "Whatever game you believe she is playing, she is still my sister. I cannot leave her here to be killed by our father's men." For a long moment Rydian said nothing. Then he nodded curtly. "She comes with us, but she will be confined to quarters and watched at all times. If she is innocent, she has nothing to fear. If she is not—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. They found Lysara in the loft, too weak to even climb down the ladder. Rydian's guards carried her out on a makeshift stretcher, her golden hair hanging lank, her breathing shallow. As they loaded her into a carriage, Lysara's eyes found Nerissa's. "You told him," she whispered, "about the boys." "He found out himself." Something flickered across Lysara's gaunt features. Fear? Calculation? Regret? "Be careful, sister." Her voice was barely audible. "He will charm you. He will make you believe everything he says. But kings always have secrets. Always." Before Nerissa could respond, the carriage door closed between them. The journey to the palace took 3 hours. Nerissa rode with her sons in a separate carriage, watching the landscape transform from remote forest to cultivated farmland, to the sprawling outskirts of the capital city. As they passed through a small village, Bastian suddenly pressed his face to the window. "Mama, look! It is the bird, the red-eyed bird from home." Nerissa's blood ran cold. She leaned forward, and there it was, perched on a signpost, watching their carriage pass with those unnatural crimson eyes. Her father's familiar, still watching, still tracking. She made a mental note to tell Rydian. If Lord Morkant was still monitoring their movements, they were far from safe. The twins pressed their faces to the windows, drinking in sights they had only heard about in stories. "Mama, look, a bridge. Mama, there are so many people. Mama, is that where the king lives? Are we really going to stay there?" Their excitement was infectious, cutting through the dread coiled in Nerissa's stomach. Whatever dangers awaited at the palace, her children were happy. For now, that had to be enough. When they finally passed through the palace gates, Calem turned to her with shining eyes. "Mama," he breathed. "It is like a castle from a fairy tale." She pulled him close, pressing a kiss to his dark hair. "It is." "And father lives here? Our real father?" The word sent a complicated pang through her chest. Yes, my love. He does. Then this is going to be the best adventure ever. Nerissa wished she shared his certainty, because as she stepped out of the carriage and saw the crowd of courtiers gathering to stare, as she felt the weight of 100 curious and hostile gazes settling on her and her sons, she understood with terrible clarity that the real battle was only beginning. Somewhere in this glittering palace of gold and secrets, her father was plotting their destruction. Her sister was weaving webs of manipulation from her sickbed. And the man she had once loved, the man she was terrified of loving again, held all their lives in his blood-stained hands. Rydian appeared at her side, offering his arm with formal courtesy. "Welcome home," he said quietly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Nerissa took his arm. Together. It was a beautiful word. She just hoped it was not another lie. The first week at the palace passed in a blur of overwhelming sensations. The twins took to royal life with the adaptability of children, racing through marble corridors, befriending stable hands and kitchen maids, pestering every guard for stories of battles and adventures. Within 3 days, they had charmed half the staff and scandalized the other half with their wild energy and complete disregard for protocol. "Your sons attempted to ride one of the warhounds this morning," Rydian informed Nerissa over breakfast, his lips twitching with barely suppressed amusement. "Sir Brennick nearly had a heart attack." "They are your sons too." Nerissa set down her tea with a pointed look. "Perhaps they inherited their recklessness from your side." "I was a perfectly behaved child." "Somehow I doubt that." The easy banter surprised her. She had expected tension, awkwardness, the weight of 5 years pressing down on every interaction. Instead, she found herself slipping into something dangerously close to comfort. Rydian was attentive without being overbearing. He joined them for meals, played with the boys in the gardens, and answered their endless questions with patience she had not expected from a king. At night, he walked her to her chambers, kissed her hand with formal courtesy, and left without pushing for more. It was driving her mad. "He is courting you," her assigned lady's maid observed one evening while brushing Nerissa's hair. "Properly this time, the way he should have from the beginning. He is manipulating me." "Perhaps." The maid, a sharp-tongued woman named Odessa who had served 3 queens and feared nothing, met her eyes in the mirror. "Or perhaps he genuinely regrets what happened and wishes to make amends. Not all men are monsters, my lady. Some are simply fools who made terrible choices and must live with the consequences." Nerissa had no response to that. On the 8th night, Rydian invited her to walk in the moonlit gardens, the same gardens where they had first fallen in love, where he had pressed her against an ancient oak and kissed her until she forgot her own name. "Do you remember?" he asked, stopping beside that very tree. "I remember everything." The admission cost her more than she wanted to show. "I remember believing every word you said, every promise you made. They were not lies." Rydian turned to face her, moonlight silvering his features. "Everything I told you was true. I loved you. I wanted to claim you. I intended to spend my life with you. And yet, I was weak." He did not flinch from her accusation. "Your father found the one lever that could move me, and I let him. I told myself I was protecting you, protecting my kingdom. But the truth is I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if I defied him." "What exactly did he have on your family?" Rydian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old shame. "My father did not die of illness, as the official histories claim. He was murdered by my mother." Nerissa's breath caught. She discovered he had been unfaithful. Dozens of affairs over their entire marriage, bastard children scattered across the kingdom. When she confronted him, he laughed at her. Told her she was his property and would accept whatever he chose to do. Rydian's jaw tightened. So she poisoned his wine and watched him die. Then she took her own life, rather than face execution. "Goddess above." Your father somehow obtained proof. Letters, witness testimonies, the confession my mother wrote before she died. If he had released them, the legitimacy of my entire reign would have been questioned. The bastard children could have claimed the throne. Civil war would have been inevitable. Nerissa absorbed this, her mind reeling. So when he demanded you choose Lysara, I thought I was choosing the kingdom over myself. I thought if I sacrificed my happiness, at least everyone else would be safe. Rydian laughed bitterly. Instead, I lost you. Gained a wife who despises me, and your father has spent 5 years bleeding the treasury dry through his political leverage. He is still blackmailing you? Constantly. Trade concessions, military appointments, even judicial decisions. Every time I refuse, he hints that perhaps certain documents might find their way into the hands of foreign enemies. Nerissa thought of her father's cold eyes, his calculating ambition. She had known he was ruthless. She had not realized the full scope of his machinations. And the raven with red eyes that Bastian saw at our cottage? That was father's spy? Rydian nodded grimly. My spy master confirmed it. Your father's network uses those familiars to track targets across the realm. He has been watching you for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. The confirmation sent ice through her veins. All those nights she had tucked her sons into bed, thinking they were safe. Her father had been watching, calculating, planning. We have to stop him. I have been trying. For 5 years, I have been gathering evidence, building cases, trying to find something that could destroy him without destroying myself in the process. Rydian took her hands, his grip warm and desperate. But now there is something more important. You, the boys. I will not let him use my sons the way he used me. What are you saying? I am saying I am done being afraid. His silver eyes blazed with determination. Tomorrow, I am going to publicly acknowledge Calum and Bastian as my legitimate heirs. I am going to annul my marriage to Lysara on grounds of conspiracy and treason, and I am going to ask you, properly this time, before the entire court, if you will be my queen. Nerissa's heart stopped. Rydian, you do not have to answer now. You do not have to answer tomorrow. But I need you to know my intentions. I need you to know that I am not playing games or making moves on a political board. I want you. I have always wanted you. And I will spend the rest of my life proving it if you let me. She stared at him. This man who had broken her heart, who had given her the 2 greatest joys of her life, who stood before her now stripped of all pretense and armor. Why should I believe you? She whispered. After everything? Because I love you. The words were simple, raw, and undeniable. I loved you 5 years ago, and I love you now. I loved you when I thought you were dead. I loved you when I married your sister. I have loved you every single day of my miserable existence since the moment I let you go. Nerissa felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She wanted to believe him. Goddess help her. She wanted it so badly. I love you too, she admitted, the confession tearing free from some locked chamber in her heart. I tried not to. I tried to hate you. But I could never. His mouth captured hers before she could finish. The kiss was nothing like she remembered. It was better. Deeper. The kiss of 2 people who had lost each other and found their way back through darkness and pain. His hands cradled her face like she was precious. His lips moved against hers with desperate tenderness, and Nerissa melted into him with a sigh of surrender. They broke apart breathless, foreheads pressed together. Tomorrow, Rydian murmured. Everything changes tomorrow. She believed him. That was her mistake. They walked back to the palace hand in hand, so wrapped in each other that they did not notice the figure watching from the shadowed colonnade. Lysara lowered her hood, her gaunt face twisted with calculation. She had heard everything, and she had plans of her own. The next morning, the great hall was packed with every noble, dignitary, and courtier in the capital. Rydian stood on the dais in his full royal regalia, looking every inch the powerful king. Beside him stood Nerissa in a gown of deep blue silk, and before them, the twins fidgeted in their new formal clothes, overwhelmed by the crowd. "Citizens of Valdros," Rydian began, his voice ringing through the hall, "I have called you here today to right a grave wrong. 5 years ago, I made a choice that I have regretted every day since. I allowed political pressure to override the truth of my heart." The crowd murmured, confused and curious. "Today, I publicly acknowledge these children, Calum and Bastian, as my legitimate heirs, born of the woman I should have claimed 5 years ago. Nerissa of House Vantris is their mother, and my true mate." Gasps echoed through the hall. Nobles exchanged shocked glances. "Furthermore," Rydian continued, "I formally annul my marriage to Lysara of House Vantris on grounds of conspiracy and failure to produce an heir. She will be—" "Lies!" The scream cut through the hall like a blade. Lysara appeared at the top of the grand staircase, supported by 2 guards she had clearly manipulated into helping her. She was dressed in white, her golden hair flowing, looking like a tragic angel. "He is the one who conspires!" Lysara shrieked, pointing at Rydian. "He has poisoned me for years. He has kept me prisoner, and now he parades his bastards before you and calls them legitimate?" The crowd erupted into chaos. "Lysara." Rydian's voice was dangerously calm. "You were confined to your chambers. Because you wanted to silence me." Lysara descended the stairs with theatrical weakness. "Just as you silenced your own mother. Just as you plan to silence anyone who threatens your power." "She is lying," Nerissa said desperately. "Rydian told me the truth about—" "The truth?" Lysara laughed wildly. "The truth is that my sister seduced the king, got pregnant to trap him, and then conspired with him to murder me so she could take my throne. That is insane." "Is it?" Lysara produced a sheaf of documents from her sleeve. "I have letters, proof of their conspiracy, witnesses who will testify that the king's own physician has been slowly poisoning me on his orders." The crowd's murmurs turned ugly. Nerissa saw doubt creeping across noble faces, suspicion replacing shock. "Father!" Lysara cried out dramatically. "Father, please, tell them the truth!" Lord Morcant stepped forward from the crowd, his expression grave and sorrowful. "It grieves me to say it," Morcant declared, "but my daughter Lysara speaks true. I have long suspected the king of foul intentions toward her. These documents she holds are forgeries." A new voice rang through the hall. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway. Old, bent with age but with eyes sharp as broken glass. Behind her walked a contingent of soldiers wearing the crest of the Royal Investigative Council, an independent body that answered to no lord or king. "Who are you?" Morcant demanded. "I am High Inquisitor Thessaly," the old woman said, "and I have spent the last 3 months investigating claims of treason within House Vantris." The hall went utterly silent. "Lord Morcant." Thessaly's voice was cold as iron. "You are under arrest for espionage, blackmail, conspiracy to commit regicide, and the murder of Eric of Thornvale 5 years past." Nerissa's knees nearly buckled. Eric, the man her father had framed her for killing. The man whose death had haunted her for 5 long years. "This is absurd," Morcant sputtered. "I demand—" "You demand nothing." Thessaly gestured, and her soldiers moved forward. "We have testimony from 3 of your former servants. We have financial records showing payments to foreign spies. And we have a confession from the assassin you hired to kill young Eric and frame your own daughter for the crime." Nerissa heard a roaring in her ears. "You murdered him." She stepped forward on shaking legs. "You killed Eric and let me believe I might have done it. You destroyed my reputation, drove me into hiding, all to cover your own treachery." Morcant's mask of outraged innocence finally cracked. Beneath it was something cold and reptilian. He was going to ruin everything, her father hissed, running off with Lysara, threatening to expose my business dealings. And you? His eyes fixed on Nerissa with pure venom. You were always too curious, too stubborn. I knew you would figure it out eventually. Better to break you first. Guards? Rydian commanded, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. Take him. But Morcant was not finished. Lysara! He shouted as the soldiers seized him. Now! Do it now! Lysara's hand moved. Something silver flashed in her grip, and before anyone could react, she plunged the blade toward Rydian's unprotected back. Nerissa did not think. Her body moved on pure instinct, throwing herself between the blade and the man she loved. The knife meant for Rydian's heart buried itself in her shoulder instead. Pain exploded through her body. She heard screaming. The twins, Rydian, the crowd. But it seemed distant, muffled by the roaring in her ears. Nerissa! Rydian caught her as she fell, his face a mask of horror. Behind him, guards swarmed Lysara, wrenching the bloody knife from her grip, forcing her to the ground. No, no, no. Rydian pressed his hand against the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. Stay with me. Do not close your eyes. Help. Someone get a healer. The boys, Nerissa gasped. Protect the boys. They are safe. Everyone is safe. Just stay with me. Her vision was blurring at the edges. She could see Calum and Bastion fighting against the guards holding them back, their small faces contorted with terror. She tried to reach for them, but her arm would not obey. I am sorry. The words slipped out, barely a whisper. I should have told you about them sooner. You deserve to know. Stop. Rydian's voice cracked. Do not apologize. Do not say goodbye. I forbid it. Despite everything, she almost laughed. You cannot forbid death, my king. Watch me. The palace healers arrived in a flurry of robes and shouted commands. Nerissa felt herself being lifted, carried, and placed on something soft. Voices swirled around her. The blade was poisoned. We need the antidote stores. She is losing too much blood, but they faded in and out like waves on a distant shore. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Rydian's face. Tears streaming down his cheeks, his lips forming words she could not hear. Then, there was nothing. She woke to golden afternoon light and the sound of a child's voice reading aloud, and the brave princess climbed the tower and faced the dragon alone, because she knew that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Nerissa turned her head slowly. Every movement sent fire through her wounded shoulder, but she managed to focus on the two small figures seated beside her bed. Bastion held the storybook, his brow furrowed with concentration as he sounded out the difficult words. Calum sat beside him, uncharacteristically still, his silver eyes fixed on his mother's face. Mama! Calum launched himself toward her, stopping just short when he remembered her injury. You are awake. Father. Father. She is awake. Thundering footsteps, and then Rydian burst through the door, looking like he had not slept in days. His hair was wild, his clothes rumpled, dark circles shadowing his eyes. He was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The healers said you would recover. He crossed to her bedside in 3 long strides, taking her uninjured hand in both of his. But you would not wake. 2 days, Nerissa. 2 days of not knowing if... His voice broke. I am stubborn. Her throat was raw, her voice barely a croak. Did you really think a knife would finish me? It was poisoned. Lysara coated it with nightshade extract. The healers barely found the antidote in time. The memory of her sister's twisted face flashed through Nerissa's mind. Where is she? What happened after? She is in the dungeon, awaiting trial for attempted regicide. Rydian's jaw tightened. Your father is in the adjacent cell. The evidence against him is overwhelming. He will be executed within the month. Nerissa closed her eyes. She should feel something. Grief, perhaps, or satisfaction. Instead, there was only exhaustion and a hollow sense of inevitability. Lysara claimed you were poisoning her. She had documents, witnesses, all fabricated. Rydian shook his head. She has been planning this for years, apparently. Working with your father, building a case to destroy me and seize the throne through whatever means necessary. The wasting illness was entirely self-inflicted. She administered small doses of poison to herself over months, creating symptoms she could blame on me while building evidence for her accusations. But the night she came to me in Thornwick, she seemed so frightened, so desperate. She was desperate. Desperate to find you before I did. Your father's spies had reported rumors of a woman living in the remote villages who matched your description. Lysara volunteered to investigate, planning to eliminate you and the boys before anyone learned of their existence. The depth of the betrayal stole Nerissa's breath. Her own sister had come to her door not seeking sanctuary, but plotting murder. Why? She whispered. Why would she? Power. Rydian's voice was tired, sad. The same reason behind every terrible thing your family has done. Your father raised both of you to see the world as a game to be won. Lysara simply played it better than anyone realized. Calum climbed carefully onto the bed, curling against his mother's uninjured side. Aunt Lysara was a bad person, he said solemnly. She tried to hurt father. She tried to hurt you. I am glad she is in the dungeon. Me too, Bastian added, though he looked more uncertain. Is she going to die like grandfather? Rydian and Nerissa exchanged a look over the children's heads. These were not conversations for young ears, but the boys had already seen too much to be shielded completely. There will be a trial, Rydian said carefully. The council will decide what happens to her. Will you decide? Calum asked. The king does not judge alone. That is not how justice works. The answer seemed to satisfy the twins. They snuggled closer to their mother, and for a moment, despite everything, Nerissa felt a fragile peace settle over her. Then Rydian spoke again. There is something else you should know. His tone made her stomach clench. What is it? The documents Lysara produced. The ones claiming I conspired with you to murder her. They included copies of my mother's confession. The secret your father used to blackmail me for 5 years. Nerissa's heart sank. It is public now. Yes. Rydian's expression was unreadable. The entire kingdom knows how my father truly died. By tomorrow, every foreign court will know as well. What does that mean for you? For your throne? I do not know yet. He laughed humorlessly. There will be challenges, certainly. Lords who see opportunity in my weakness. Foreign powers who might try to exploit the scandal. But... He paused, something shifting in his eyes. I find I do not care as much as I expected. Rydian, 5 years ago, I chose to protect that secret above all else. I sacrificed you. I sacrificed our children. I sacrificed my own integrity to keep it buried. He lifted her hand to his lips. Now it is out, and I am still standing. You are still here. The boys are safe. Perhaps the secret was never worth protecting at all. The simple truth of it hit Nerissa like a wave. All those years of pain, of separation, of believing herself abandoned, all because of a secret that had now been exposed anyway. If Rydian had simply told her the truth from the beginning, if they had faced it together. We cannot change the past, she said quietly. Only the future. Then let me ask you again. Rydian's silver eyes met hers with burning intensity. Not in a crowded hall, not as a political declaration. Just us. Just here. Nerissa, will you marry me? Will you be my queen? My mate? My partner in all things? Calum's head popped up. Say yes, Mama. Say yes, Bastian echoed. Nerissa looked at her sons. These impossible, wonderful boys who had given her reason to survive the darkest years of her life. She looked at Rydian, the man who had broken her heart, and was now trying so desperately to mend it. She thought of all the reasons she should refuse, the danger, the politics, the scars that still ached beneath the surface. Then she thought of the moonlit garden, of his lips on hers, of the future they could build together. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." The twins erupted in cheers. Rydian leaned forward, careful of her wound, and kissed her with such tender reverence that tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I have always loved you. I will love you until the stars burn out and the mountains crumble to dust." "That is very dramatic," Nerissa managed, laughing through her tears. "I am a king. Drama is expected." The wedding took place 6 weeks later on the first day of spring. The great cathedral overflowed with guests. Nobles who had once whispered about the mysterious hidden woman now craned their necks to glimpse the queen, who had captured their king's heart twice over. Common folk lined the streets outside, throwing flower petals and cheering loud enough to shake the ancient stones. Nerissa walked the aisle alone, as she had always wanted. No father to give her away. No sister standing in support. Just her own 2 feet carrying her toward the future she had chosen. Rydian waited at the altar, resplendent in silver and black, his eyes never leaving her face. The twins stood beside him, serving as ring-bearers, practically vibrating with excitement. The ceremony itself was simple. They had both had enough of politics and spectacle. They spoke their vows clearly, honestly, without pretense or performance. "I take you as my mate," Rydian said, sliding the ring onto her finger. "In darkness and in light, in struggle and in peace, from this moment until my last breath." "I take you as my mate," Nerissa echoed, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "I choose you, as I should have been allowed to choose you 5 years ago. I choose you today, tomorrow, and every day that follows." When the priest pronounced them bound, Rydian kissed her like a man released from prison. The crowd erupted in celebration, the twins jumped up and down shrieking with joy, and Nerissa laughed against her husband's lips. "My queen," he murmured, pulling back just enough to look at her. "My king," she returned. Calum tugged at his father's sleeve. "Does this mean we are really princes now?" "You have always been princes," Rydian said, scooping both boys into his arms. "You simply did not know it yet." The reception lasted well into the night. There was feasting and dancing, toasts that ranged from heartfelt to hilariously inappropriate, and more joy than the palace had seen in decades. But eventually, the celebration wound down. Guests departed, servants began cleaning, and the royal family retreated to their private chambers. The twins were exhausted, falling asleep almost before their heads touched their pillows. Nerissa tucked them in, kissing each forehead, marveling at how much had changed since she had last performed this ritual in their tiny cottage in Thornwick. "They are remarkable," Rydian said from the doorway. "You raised them well." "I did my best." She straightened, turning to face him. "Though they seem to be thriving here. Calum has already informed 3 different tutors that he intends to be the greatest warrior king in history. Bastian wants to study magic with the court wizards. Both excellent ambitions." Rydian offered his hand. "But their education can wait until morning. Tonight, I want my wife to myself." Heat flooded Nerissa's cheeks as she took his hand. He led her through corridors she was still learning, past guards who bowed deeply, to a chamber she had not yet seen. The royal suite. Their suite now. The room was vast and beautiful, dominated by a bed large enough for 6 people, with windows overlooking the moonlit gardens. Candles flickered on every surface, filling the space with warm golden light. "I had the servants prepare it specially," Rydian said, suddenly almost shy. "If it is not to your liking, we can change." Nerissa silenced him with a kiss. Unlike their first kiss in the garden, unlike the desperate farewell 5 years ago, this kiss was unhurried. They had time now, all the time in the world. Slowly, reverently, they undressed each other. Every revealed inch of skin was explored, mapped, worshipped. When they finally came together, it was with the certainty of two people who had fought through hell to reach each other. Afterward, tangled in silk sheets, Nerissa traced lazy patterns on Rydian's chest. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we rule." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Together, as we should have from the start. There will be challenges. Your father's execution is scheduled for next week, and Lysara's trial begins the day after. Some lords still question the legitimacy of our marriage, and foreign diplomats are circling like vultures." "That sounds exhausting." "It will be." He smiled, pulling her closer. "But I find I am looking forward to it. Facing challenges is much easier when you are not facing them alone." Nerissa thought of the years she had spent in isolation, the weight she had carried by herself, the fears she had never been able to share. "I am done being alone," she said quietly. "Good." Rydian kissed her forehead. "Because I intend to be extremely present. Perhaps annoyingly so. You may grow tired of me." "I doubt that." "We shall see. I can be quite irritating when I put my mind to it." She laughed, and the sound filled the chamber like music. The execution was swift and public. Lord Morcant faced his death with cold defiance, refusing to acknowledge his crimes even as the evidence was read aloud to the assembled crowd. He did not look at Nerissa when she took her place on the royal balcony. He did not look at anyone. When the axe fell, Nerissa felt nothing but relief. The man who had tormented her entire life, who had murdered innocents and sold secrets and destroyed his own family for power, was finally gone. Lysara's trial proved more complicated. She pled madness, claimed that years of self-administered poison had damaged her mind beyond repair. Some believed her, most did not. In the end, the council sentenced her to lifetime imprisonment in a remote tower, stripped of her title and lands. She would live out her days in comfortable confinement, harming no one ever again. Nerissa visited her once, before she was taken away. "Why?" she asked, standing outside her sister's cell. "We were children together. We shared a mother, a home, a life. How did we become this?" Lysara looked up from her cot, her golden hair lank and unwashed, her beauty faded to a pale shadow. "Because father taught me that love was weakness," she said flatly. "And I believed him. I believed that power was the only thing worth having, the only thing that would keep me safe. By the time I realized he was wrong, it was too late. It is never too late. For you, perhaps." Lysara's eyes drifted to the small window of her cell. "You always were the stronger one. Even father knew it, though he would never admit it. That is why he tried so hard to destroy you." Nerissa had no response. She left the prison and never visited again. Spring turned to summer, summer to autumn. The kingdom flourished under its new queen. Nerissa brought a perspective that decades of insular noble rule had lacked. She understood the concerns of common folk, the struggles of those who lived far from the capital, the daily realities that courtiers never considered. She established schools in rural villages. She reformed the orphanage system. She created a council of advisors that included merchants, farmers, and craftspeople alongside nobles. And through it all, Rydian stood beside her. They argued sometimes, passionate disagreements about policy and priority that left servants nervously clearing the hallways. But they always found their way back to each other. Always remembered that they were partners, not opponents. The twins grew strong and wild and wonderful. Calum began training with the Royal Guard, displaying a talent for combat that made his instructors nervous. Bastian apprenticed with the court historians, devouring knowledge with an appetite that seemed bottomless. I know. Rydian smiled against her hair. "I love you too." Above them, the moon hung full and bright, illuminating a world of infinite possibility. The Alpha King had chosen her sister at the ceremony. But in the end, he had found his way back to her. and they had found their way to forever. The claiming ceremony was supposed to be the greatest night of Nerissa's life. For 3 months, she had been the Alpha King's secret. Stolen kisses in moonlit gardens, whispered promises in shadowed corridors, his hands memorizing the curves of her body while his voice swore she was the only one. When the ceremony comes, Rydian had told her, I will claim you before the entire kingdom. You will be my queen. She had believed him, so when the Alpha King walked past her without a glance and stopped in front of her sister, when he spoke the words that shattered everything, Nerissa made a choice. She disappeared. 5 years later, with twin sons who had their father's silver eyes, she was found. And everything she thought she knew about love, betrayal, and destiny was proven wrong, because the king had never stopped loving her. And the secrets that tore them apart became the very things that brought them back together. Some stories end with heartbreak. This one ended with healing. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoy these stories and would like to support the channel, hit the subscription button. Let me know what you thought. I always read your comments, and they mean more than you know.